How are you, folks? Dave Brown here with the New Populist. Thank you again for joining me. Today, I want to talk about Tulsi Gabbard because the media, the Democrats, the deep state blob, whatever you want to call them, they are in a frenzy because of her nomination by Trump as the Director of National Intelligence. They are absolutely losing their minds. John Brennan, the former CIA director, he's on TV, losing his mind. Pretty much everybody that we don't like. And why are they so worried about her becoming the Director of National Intelligence? Well, the position itself oversees all 18 intel agencies and is an advisor to the president. So it is a very powerful position. She will be close to Trump. She will be giving him information, filtering out intelligence information that goes to him. And the blob, the establishment, doesn't want someone like that controlling the flow of information. If you look back at our previous wars, Iraq, Afghanistan, specifically Iraq, we had bad intelligence that allowed Bush to invade Iraq. If you have an honest person running your intel services who questions bad intelligence, well, that is a problem if you have politicians who want to do something, invade Iraq, for example. So when you have somebody like Tulsi Gabbard at DNI, big problem for future war plans. So let me first play a few clips of some of the responses to Tulsi Gabbard because they are so ridiculous, so over the top, and it shows you just how dishonest some of these politicians are running our government.
So it just got word. It's Matt Gaetz for Attorney General, Tulsi Gabbard for DNI. Tulsi loves Russia. She loves Assad. Assad is a butcher.
His whole questions like Tulsi Gabbard does. You really want her to have all of the secrets of the United States and our defense intelligence agencies when she has so clearly been in Putin's pocket? That just has to be a hard no.
Tulsi Gabbard is someone who has met with war criminals, violated the Department of State's guidance, and secretly, clandestinely went to Syria and met with Assad, who gassed and attacked his own people with chemical weapons. She's considered to be essentially, by most assessments, a Russian asset, and would be the most.
Is that how you consider her? Is that what you consider her?
Oh yes, there's no question.
There's no question she is a Russian asset. And notice one thing. They call someone an asset, but they never actually explain what they say that was wrong. And that should clue you in there. Back in during the Iraq War, if you said that we should not invade Iraq and that Saddam did not have weapons of mass destruction, you would have been right. But those people back then, what did they do? They accused you of being anti-American. Oh, you're pro-Saddam. How dare you say that? Same thing with Tulsi. They never actually say what she said was wrong because what she says is right. So what has she said that has been the reason they're attacking her? Let's start with Ukraine. Here is Tulsi Gabbard on Joe Rogan talking about Ukraine.
So what we're seeing play out now is essentially a proxy war. U.S. is engaging in a proxy war with Russia, using Ukraine as their military. So the U.S. and some European countries, predominantly the U.S., though, are providing billions of dollars in funding, weapon systems, and so forth, and essentially waging this war using the Ukrainian military and people as their chess pieces in this geopolitical chess game. The ultimate objective being regime change with Russia. And you can see years before, obviously, Russia's invasion in Ukraine, This anti-Russia sentiment has been building up by the permanent Washington establishment and laying the groundwork, and this was the opportunity that they saw.
And she is 100% right. I've talked about before, the United States' long-term goal with Russia was for Russia to be absorbed into our neoliberal system. Obviously, the Soviet Union collapsed in December 1991. Ukraine was formed. Russia was in turmoil. There was so many problems in the 90s in Russia. Employment issues, suicide rate, alcoholism. It was a real mess there as they tried to collect themselves after the fall of the Soviet Union. And at that time, they had Boris Yeltsin as their president. And in 1996, he was running for re-election and not doing well, really bad actually. And there was an article in Time magazine talking about American advisors who clandestinely went to Russia to help the Yeltsin campaign. Clandestinely. They lied and said that they were there on business when they were really running numbers for Yeltsin. So we talk about Russian collusion or Russian interference into our election. We in fact did that to Russia in 1996, and Yeltsin got reelected. And why did we like Yeltsin so much? Well, Yeltsin allowed essentially Russia to be looted by these oligarchs. And these oligarchs were buying up the gas companies, the media, banking infrastructure at pennies at the dollar. And they were working with the West. So when Putin came into power, all of these oligarchs fled Russia. And where did they go? To the West, to England. And many of them went to London, where they had their tens of billions of dollars that they robbed from their country. And then they cried about how Putin was destroying democracy. Imagine that. You loot your country in a time of your country was in a really bad place for billions of dollars in the 90s. And you actually complained that you were a victim of Putin and that all you wanted was democracy. Well, Putin did what he thought he needed to do to protect his country. And because Putin chased out these oligarchs and stopped this neoliberal, or stopped this democratizing of Russia in the way that we wanted, we've hated Vladimir Putin ever since. And we've used Ukraine as our in to try to destabilize Russia. 2014, our government supported the overthrow of their president. And then we had pro-American presidents in Ukraine. And in 2014, when that happened as well, we had Russia take over Crimea. And we saw the Donbass regions basically say, we're not going along with this new government. And a civil war started in the Donbass in 2014 between the new Ukrainian government and these two separatist states that were not going along with the plan. So when people say the war in Ukraine started in 2022, that's not true. It started in 2014. And finally in 2022, the Russians decided that they needed to intervene to end this war and to protect the Russians-speaking people in the Donbass. Now, it's obviously much, much more complicated than that, but that's sort of the gist. And our plan, the United States, was to try to pull Russia into a long, protracted war that would cause the economy to collapse. And hopefully, our hope was that it would cause the fall of Vladimir Putin, and then we could get somebody that was more friendly toward the West in power, and that Russia would eventually be absorbed into our liberal system. And then we could pivot and focus on China and try to do something similar. That was the plan. Unfortunately for us, it didn't work. All of those forecasts in 2022 of the Russian economy collapsing never happened. All those forecasts of the Russian military running out of shells and missiles never happened. They were resilient. And our plan simply failed. And now we're trying to figure out how to extract ourselves from this war and save face. And that's why right now we're saying Joe Biden approved long-range missiles to sabotage Trump. And then Trump is trying to figure out, okay, I want to negotiate, but this war's been going on for 2.5 years, and the Russians, they're going to drive a hard bargain because they've invested way too much to just say, okay, we'll call a truce here. Very complicated, and but Tulsi Gabbard was correct. And when you say the truth, you are accused of being a Russian asset. Now, another component here is Syria. She met with Bashar al-Assad, Tulsi Gabbard, and that really pissed off the blob and the establishment. Here is Tulsi talking about meeting dictators or meeting other foreign leaders during the 2020 Democrat debates.
But your point about judgment is absolutely correct. Our commander-in-chief does need to have good judgment. And what you've just pointed out is that you would lack the courage to meet with both adversaries and friends to ensure the peace and national security of our nation. I take the example of those leaders who have come before us, leaders like JFK, who met with Khrushchev, like Roosevelt, who met with Stalin,
like Donald Trump,
Reagan, who met and worked with Gorbachev. These issues of national security are incredibly important. I will meet with and do what is necessary to make sure that no more of our brothers and sisters in uniform are needlessly sent into harm's way fighting regime change wars that undermine our national security. I'll bring real leadership and experience to the White House.
So that's her talking about meeting dictators, and she was, again, criticized for doing so. But here is a collage of us or other leaders in the United States meeting dictators. And of course, here's JFK with the Soviet premier. And then we have, oh, look at that. That's Donald Rumsfeld meeting Saddam Hussein. And then we have Condoleezza Rice and Muammar Gaddafi, who we screwed over, and he was very publicly murdered in this really ugly situation. And then we have, look at that. That's Nancy Pelosi and Bashar al-Assad. And then finally, hey, there's Hillary Clinton with Vladimir Putin. So leaders meet with these guys all the time. Back in the 80s, when Iraq was fighting Iran, we were all happy with Iraq, and we met with them because at that time it was convenient for us to be friends with Iraq. And then, of course, changed in the 90s. Just like Osama bin Laden, who his CIA name was Tim Osman. When he was fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan in the 70s, he was our friend. So these people we call dictators who are evil and you can't meet, well, no, we'll meet them if we think it's good for us. And then if they do something or it becomes inconvenient, we'll turn on them and pretend that, oh my God, you can't meet that guy. That guy's so terrible. We're hypocritical. We're so full of it. But this Syria thing is interesting because back in 2012, when Obama was president, the CIA, with its authorization, started an operation called Timber Sycamore, where we were clandestinely feeding weapons into Syria to the rebels who were fighting the Syrian government. It was part of our regime change operation. Another regime change operation. And of course, it failed. He's still in power right now. And the people we were giving weapons to, before we gave them weapons, we had classified them as terrorists. These are bad guys. So we were like, wait, we can't give weapons to terrorists. So what they did was they changed the name of the organization that they were called to pretend that they were somebody different. Now they became freedom fighters. Of course, that's not true. We were giving weapons to terrorist groups in Syria to fight Bashar al-Assad. Now, when Trump came into power, he kind of wanted to end this engagement here. And the CIA knew this. He wanted to wind it down. But then Assad did something very weird. He was winning this war, but for some reason, he decided, I'm going to launch chemical weapons at my own people. The Syrian gas attacks. And when this happened, Donald Trump was pushed to do something about it. The establishment, the blob, the deep state, they wanted us to re-engage this. And there was these chemical attacks. This is so bad. We must get involved. And Trump, very begrudgingly, did something. He launched some Tomahawk missiles into Syria. But before we did, we called the Russians, because they were there too, to warn them. And then we launched these missiles at an air base and put a couple of holes in a runway. It was absolutely meaningless, except for the fact that it was showing that the United States was re-engaging with Syria. So that's what we did. And as it turns out, we never had conclusive proof that Bashar al-Assad had gassed his own people. And in fact, again, it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to do so. And that is something that Tulsi Gabbard pointed out, that it made no sense and there was no actual proof. So Trump eventually ended the CIA program to covertly arm the anti-Assad rebels in Syria. And when he did that, that pissed off, again, the establishment, because they wanted to continue this operation, even though it was a failure. And again, Tulsi Gabbard came out and said that she was skeptical that the Assad regime was behind these gas attacks. So for that other reason, the blob, the establishment, does not want Tulsi Gabbard as the director of national intelligence, because she has a long history of correctly pointing out that the intel we've acted on has been incorrect. And if she's there next to Trump and some of this garbage intel comes in, she can intercept it and go, I don't buy that one, Mr. President. Let's be careful here and not act on it. And that is why she is so dangerous to the establishment. She is the brakes to their BS, and she'll be in the way. And one last clip I want to play, just to show how ridiculous these people are. We have AOC, who is one of the most disingenuous, dumbest, but slick people in our government. Here was the argument she actually made about Tulsi Gabbard. Listen to this.
And we haven't even gotten to Tulsi Gabbard potentially having access to national security information. And Russia loves it, loves her.
And I actually think, almost more than Matt Gaetz, Tulsi Gabbard's appointment is devastating. And Tulsi Gabbard's nomination, as much as she says that she's an anti-war person, she's not.
Yeah.
She supports very pro-war individuals,
including
abroad.
in Syria.
And let's be very clear, a Tulsi Gabbard nomination is a pro-war nomination globally. Point blank, period.
As is Donald Trump as president of the United States.
So the person, Tulsi Gabbard, who spoke out against the Syrian regime change operation, the person who has spoken out against the war in Ukraine being a proxy war, she is the one who's really pro-war. Not them. Not AOC, who has supported funding for the Ukraine war. Not her. It's Tulsi Gabbard, who is really the one who was pro-war. These people are absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that anybody believes what they say is beyond me. Although if you look at the ratings for MSNBC that AOC was on, there's not a lot of people watching, because they're catching on. And that is what the media and the establishment is really freaked out about. The fact that so many people are not believing them and looking for alternative sources for their information, because they know that they are being lied to. And they are. So we'll see if Tulsi Gabbard gets past confirmation. And if she doesn't, will Donald Trump give her a recess appointment? I hope so. He took her to the UFC. She is part of his Avenger group of politicians who will be battling the deep state. And I think that was Trump signaling that she's my girl for DNI. We're going to ride together. And I dare the Republican Senate to not confirm her. But that's certainly a possibility because, unfortunately, our Republican Senate is full of rhinos, sellouts, and establishment hacks. So we'll just have to wait and see. Well, that is it for now. Thank you for joining me. If you are new to my channel, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.